Hey guys, so I know a lot of you have been waiting for me to do a review about how my experience was at this particular confinement center. So let's just break it down into different categories. There's going to be space, there's food, um, nursery care, mommy care, and I don't know, the last thing would be miscellaneous like activities, gifts, and things like that. So let's start with space. In terms of space, what we notice is that there's like two different, or rather three different types of space that you would look at. There is a bungalow home kind of space, there's the hotel room kind of space, and there's also like a whole apartment kind of space. So we did look at a hotel room kind of space, and we also looked at this place. We also heard feedbacks from our friends who went to like hotel rooms kind of places and like home style kind of place. So we decided to go with this place because we really liked its space. It's like a bungalow with 8 rooms, and the good thing about home kind of centers is that it's usually not overpopulated. Like we did go visit one hotel style kind of confinement center, and one thing that we noticed is that every floor had a lot of mummies. So like it depends on the center, but some had 7 mummies on one floor, some had 11 mummies on one floor, or 12. So that also means 12 babies or 11 babies in one nursery, and then sometimes they only have like a few nurses to 11 babies and things like that. So those are things that we considered before choosing to do our confinement here. Over here they have 8 rooms, and they have like a nursery. It means there will be 8 at any one time in point in time. The most babies that there will be at one point in time will be 8 babies, but so far from the time I've come here, the most that we've had at any one point in time was 6 babies. When we first entered, I think a few moms checked out around the same time as well. So for a while there was 3 babies, then 4, then it became 5, and then now six babies. So yeah, coming back to the space, we chose this space because like we were worried about how I might feel confined, because like after all you're going to be staying here for 28 days, or rather 29 days, and it's like being confined in like a hotel room. It's kind of like, in COVID days where you had to be quarantined in a hotel. It's kind of like that. I mean, it is called confinement in the end of the day, but like that was what we were worried about, being confined in a hotel room for like a whole month. So that is one of the main reasons we chose to go with this place, because they have like a few common areas for you to just sit down and like look at nature, look at like the pool, the trees, the sky, the clouds, the birds. So yeah, the space wise, we did like the space, and I would say I would rate it about 8/10 in terms of the space. Now let's move on to the food. So in confinement, the reason why people go to confinement is because especially in Chinese confinement, there are a lot of like practices and culture and traditions which are usually followed during this confinement period for both mommy and baby. So in terms of the food, when I came to a confinement center, I would have expected to have confinement kind of food, not like normal food that you can buy at a restaurant or order from a restaurant or just cook at home. Honestly, from the food point of view, I would say it did not come up to my expectations, because in my first round of confinement, we really strictly followed the way confinement food is usually cooked. So, using yellow wine in your cooking, and then like having all those kind of like dishes and food that was very like, in Chinese we would call it bowl, like very bowl. It's like, to kind of like nurse you back to health kind of food, not just like ordinary like dishes that you can order from a restaurant. And honestly, the food here, it felt that way. It felt like food that I can just go to a restaurant and order. So I would say that's a bit disappointing on that end, on this category of food, because like I think the big things that you look at is food and nursing care, and like I was quite disappointed with the food over here. Is it First thing is like it's not very confinement kind of food. They barely use much yellow wine, or like they did use ginger here and there, but it was not like a lot. But on their TNCs, they say that they are not a traditional confinement center, and because of that, they don't do those kind of like very strong yellow wine kind of like food and things like that. So if you're looking for very like proper strong confinement kind of food that is very bold, then I would say you would be disappointed with the food here. Also, so there's 4 weeks, right? The first 3 weeks the food was really quite disappointing, and the last week it did get a little bit better. Reason being is for the first 3 weeks, a particular chef was the chef for those 3 weeks, and then they switched chef at the last week. But then this chef has now come back. So I was hoping to have this chef for like my final week, to have like nice, good food for the last week I'm here. But I only had her food like for a few days, and then like this chef came back for the last few days that I'm here. So that was a bit disappointing. Yeah, if I were to give a rating for the food, I'd probably give it a 5/10, because no doubt from the videos you can see the presentation was there, but taste wise it was not there for me. There was even a day where I had breakfast and it was soup with mihun, and there was like some fried fish fillets on it. The soup tasted like water, and I felt like I was eating mihun with plain water, and the only thing that had taste was the fish. So yeah, that's one example. And then other days, like the yellow wine chicken, it looks so good, but when I tasted it and had bites of it, it was so diluted, it was barely any taste. And then there were some days where like certain dishes, like the vegetable, will be like really saltish, and then the pork is also like really saltish. So it's like, yeah, that's why I say taste wise it was not there for me. There was also a day where I ate like this chicken, and I found out that inside it was quite raw. It's like not fully cooked. So that was quite a big deal to me. Like honestly, there were many times where when I had the food, and I asked myself, if I was eating at a restaurant, would I have returned this dish? The answer is yes. So like, but at the center you don't really think about that, because like they cook your portion, and then after that you just like kind of like accept that, okay, you just have to eat this. Plus you don't really have time to wait for them to cook another dish, because like your schedule is so tight, like you're pumping and then you're feeding, and like every time you want to eat, and then suddenly baby's hungry, and then you gotta breastfeed. So you just end up accepting it. But if you really think about it, we paid for this food. And if I would have returned this food at a restaurant, why am I not doing it here? So I think that is something that I wished I did, instead of just like giving feedback like, hey, this mihun was tasteless, or hey, this egg was like really burnt, that it tasted bitter, and things like that. Like I wished I was more vocal about that. But anyways, but I would feel like a good part of the whole thing is that they did take feedback. So when certain days, there was one day we had breakfast, they gave 2 slices of French toast with like a cup of milk. That was completely not enough for me, because like you're so hungry after like producing milk the entire night, pumping and like feeding throughout the night. You just get so hungry by breakfast. So I did feedback like that was not enough for me. So they actually like cooked additional like egg and toast for me, or like from that point onwards they kind of like made it a point to increase the portion. So that's the good aspect. But yes, out of 4 weeks, 3 weeks of food was just, and the last week, few days was good, but few days when this chef came back, it was just, so that's my feedback on food. Now let's move on to nursing care. So for the nursing care, I feel like there are a few of them who are certified nurses, but some of them are just like caregivers. They're not certified nurses. So on that front, I feel like there were nurses who were very like seasoned, but there were also nurses who were so new. And like I think this part is so important. Like food is so important for mommy, but the nursing care is so important for baby when it comes to a confinement center. So in terms of the nursing care, I feel like they had qualified certified nurses on staff, but then they also had caregivers on staff as well. When we signed up with them initially, we did find out that this center was actually new. So I think they only started operations in September 2024 or October 2024, but they kept highlighting that even though the space is new, the center itself is new, their management and team are not new. Like they said that they are not new in the confinement business because they do have an existing center in Mont Cara called Cabo, but so they reassured us that the space is new, but their management is not new. So on that point, we would kind of like expect whoever that's on their team to have experience working in a confinement center. We would also expect their management to have experience in running a confinement center. So there were quite a few things that we felt were not up to our expectations in terms of the level of service of care that was provided in this whole period of confinement. So there were qualified nurses again, but there were caregivers that were also new on team, and there were things that had to be told, had to be said. You would expect like these things would be already known, but like we still had to point out, me and Dylan still had to point out like things here and there to kind of like reassure ourselves that everything will be good when they are caring for our baby. So yeah, on the nursery care aspect, I would rate their care at maybe 6/10. Because honestly, I feel like certain things we should not have had to point it out, but we did have to. So it's different when you're having confinement at home and your mom and dad is doing it, and you just have to like, hey, ma, can you do this? Can you not do that? And things like that. But when you pay to be in a confinement center, and by the way, going to confinement centers are not cheap. Okay, it's a huge chunk of money that you are paying for a 1 month stay and care and service, right? So naturally you would expect professional care and service for both mommy and baby for this entire period of confinement. So for us, we feel like the care and service was not up to our expectations. We feel like the fact that we had to pay for this and still have to point out like certain things which we felt we shouldn't have to point out, this didn't sit very well for us. So yeah, I guess it comes back to the cons of going to a center where it's not your own flesh and blood taking care of your baby, but a stranger. And when you have to like point out things to a stranger who should be a professional caring for your baby, who should have, like a standard, like a level of standard, because you paid for these services. It's not that it was like free or volunteered, you get what I mean? So yes, in terms of nursery care, it was not fully up to our expectation. I wouldn't say not up to our I wouldn't say not to our expectation at all, but I would say it was not fully up to our expectation. And um, being a first time mommy at a confinement center, I feel like that aspect made me really reconsider if I would go back to a center if we had a third kid. If don't get excited, okay? So yeah, that is our feedback, our review on the nursery care. Another thing about the nursery care which I would highlight is the mode of communication. So over here, the mode of communication between mummies and the nursery is actually through a WhatsApp number. Literally just that. Which unfortunately sometimes due to Wi-Fi connection or due to like the app situation, where certain apps, like if you don't open the app, your messages don't get through and it's only like one tick. So sometimes I really like tried to contact them, especially in the early days when it was hard for me to walk to the nursery because my room is literally all the way at the end. It's far for me to walk to the nursery with a C-section wound. So at times when I needed to contact them, maybe they would respond only after half an hour. And to me, that is really long, because imagine, what if I had an accident? What if I fell down and I had no way of opening the door or getting out of my room? Half an hour. That is a long time. And that was also one thing which I felt was lacking in the center here. And other times when I wanted to check if baby wanted to latch, or like does baby need to breastfeed, because those are times where I'll decide whether I want to pump or I would breastfeed and latch her. Sometimes my message got through, but it was not checked immediately because they were occupied. That's fair enough. But there were times where it was only one take, so I would try to give them a call, hoping my message would actually get through, but it still did not get through. It was still one take. So I feel like using WhatsApp as the mode of communication is not very ideal, and they should have a proper, as they labeled it in the package, they call it room service intercom. So they should really have a proper room service intercom, because WhatsApp is reliant on Wi-Fi, and when there's no Wi-Fi connection, there's no way of reaching the nursery, which is quite concerning. So yeah, that's one thing which I felt was really quite lacking in the aspect of safety and also communication. Fourth and final aspect that I will talk about is the miscellaneous. So this would include like housekeeping, cleanliness, activities that we had. So we had a few activities so far. We had a massage session, we had sound bowl healing session, pumpkin spice latte, breast milk soap making, lactation cookies. So we had the lactation cookie workshop today, and I have some here that I'm munching away while having this review session. And we also had a hand and foot mold workshop. So this is actually Camilia's footprint. So it's a really cool keepsake to have, to remember how tiny her feet were when she was a newborn baby. We hope we did something like this for Clara. So yeah. So quite a number of workshops that we had, but other than that, I think in the first week I didn't really leave my room as much. So yeah, coming back to the space category. So we chose this place so that I have space to kind of like go out and like take a breather and stuff like that. But in the first week, or almost like the first week and a half, I barely left my room because obviously I was healing from my C-section, so walking is not fun. It's really painful. So just walking around in my room was quite exhausting already and painful. So yeah, we were like quite like like enlightened in a sense where we're like, oh, okay, so in the end of the day, we chose a home style, bungalow style kind of confinement center. But in the end, I ended up staying in my room for the most, like, first half of this confinement. So, and also because you spend a lot of time in your room because you're always if you're a breastfeeding mom, you're constantly in your room because you're feeding. And then after you feed, you're so tired, so then you're sleeping. And then when you're not sleeping or feeding, then you are pumping milk. So a lot of it, like, you're just in your room most of the time. So, whether or not having like a bungalow space to walk around is important for you, I guess that depends. But in my actual experience, the first half of this confinement, I barely left my room. So that wouldn't be a big factor to me in the future if I were to choose like a confinement center. But it is still nice to have that space if you're someone who would like go out and move around a lot, which I did do a few times, like from the second week onwards. Okay, coming back to the fourth category. So activities were okay, I feel. I did see some schedules for certain other confinement centers, and it was like quite full. Like they literally had activities every single day. We also did have a few like brands come and give talks, like Morinaga and Hip. And we were supposed to have a lactation talk, but the power went out yesterday. Yeah, the power went out. We had a power shortage or shortage or whatever. So we had no power for a few hours. So in the end, like the lactation talk got postponed. Unfortunately, I'll be finishing my confinement tomorrow, so that's not something that I'll be able to attend. There was also like a TCM consultation and like a lactation consultation, just 30 minutes. It's all part of the package. And then there was also like a 30-minute pediatric visit. But no, I wouldn't even say it was 30 minutes. Basically, there was a mommy and baby pediatric visit, but it was mainly for the baby actually. I think the baby just went, the doctor just went to check the baby, come and just say like, I think all is fine with your baby. So essentially that was the doctor visit. To me it wasn't a very big deal. So those were the activities that we had while we were here. In terms of like the housekeeping team, I honestly feel like it could have been better. And to me, they all felt very new to this. So a lot of things which you would expect, you had to say. So like for example, when they come and clean my room and they see that the toilet roll is almost finishing, they did not give me a new roll like automatically. Like I would have to ask them and then they will provide, or like yeah, there was just a few other things like, if they saw like the towel that I put, like let's say I put the towel on a side, like to kind of show like, okay, this towel is for washing, I put it near the laundry basket, then they would not provide new towels. So those were the things initially that I had to say. Or for example, so we have like these jars here for like red date tea and things like that. So when it was empty, sometimes when I ask, like I have to ask them to refill it, then they will refill it. Or there was sometimes where they did not wash this jar. So red date tea, after a few days, like it has this like alcoholic kind of like vinegar kind of like smell, like strong smell. So like this pot, it was not washed for I'm not sure how many days. So when at one point it got so bad that when I poured out the tea, it smelled so bad. So I had to ask them to wash the pot. So again, I feel like these are things that should not need to be said if they were trained properly, but we had to like constantly say this. And then sometimes they would come in before we in my case, I was fine with it because like I'm a CSAC mommy, so it was very hard for me to get up and open the door every time they ring the doorbell. So I would just tell them come in. But there were some staffs, either nurses or like housekeeping staff, who they don't even knock, they just like open the door and come in. So at times, especially at night, this kind of gave me and Dylan a fright because like there was no knocking before coming in. It just like they barged in, and it was kind of like we were really taken aback, especially in the middle of the night when that happened. It's kind of like a bit scared. So yes. So yeah, those were the things. A few things which, to us not a very big deal. I would feel like the biggest deal for us would be these two things, which is the food and the nursery care. um, Unfortunately, my room, because we have a bathroom, quite a huge bathroom actually, and um, every now and then there would be insects. Like so far I've killed a spider, fly. There was a very tiny flying cockroach in the bathroom. And then there were those, insects whenever it rains, those flies that will be attracted to light. So we've had some of those in the bathroom. But again, to me, those things are not a huge deal breaker. I just asked them for the electric racket and I just like swat them and killed all of them myself. But it is a bungalow. So I guess like for me, I feel like these are things that would kind of be expected somehow. And it's kind of hard to avoid. But it's not a deal breaker for us. The housekeeping level of service also, it was not a deal breaker. They did improve towards the end of my stay, but unfortunately they improved towards the end of my stay, if you get what I mean. So yeah, it would have been lovely to not have had to constantly give so much feedback about these things, and if I could just really just relax and enjoy, and really like they were trained properly to know all these things. And like when, like, let's say the hand soap is finished and they clean my room but they didn't change the hand soap, I have to ask them for new hand soap. So it was always a case where we constantly have to ask, and that's not something that was very nice, but at the same time it was a bit frustrating at times, but it's not like a deal breaker. So yeah, I would say the most important thing is having good confinement quality food, and also good quality care for baby, that is consistent throughout the entire stay. The very fact that the level and quality of care and food was not consistent throughout the stay, there were good days and then bad days. It's not something that it's very nice to experience when you have to pay so much money for this, for quality care, service, and food. They also have this two apps actually. One is the CCTV app and one is the baby daybook app. So they use this baby daybook app to kind of like, nurses will be like logging in when diaper change, when was the last formula milk, and things like that. And they also do have a CCTV app for us to see the nursery, or certain common areas and things like that. And unfortunately for me, I had issues with getting my CCTV connected. So for the entire 1 week that I was here, the first week I was here, I had no access to the CCTV at all. And to me, that was quite a big deal, because that was a time where I was most immobile. And when we did sign up here, we did highlight to them that the fact that they have CCTV coverage and we have access to the CCTV coverage 24/7, that was a big factor for us, because obviously security is a big deal to us, to any parents in fact. And so the very fact that they could not connect or lock me in to have access to see the CCTV, and this was not dealt with for the entire first week all the way until the second week, only it was a solution was provided. To me, that was quite a downside, and it's not something that should have happened. They did try, but they couldn't. Then they tried again and they couldn't. So I feel like, and then they had to wait for their big boss to come, and then their boss helped to get that sorted out. So I feel like 1 week is a long time to sort out things like this, which should have been sorted out on the first day or even by the second or third day of being here. So for one whole week, um, this yeah, I had no access to the CCTV, and I literally had to chase them to get it sorted because I was immobile, like I was recovering. I couldn't walk as much in the first week. So yeah, unfortunately that was the case for me. I'm not sure if other mummies had similar situations in terms of the CCTV, but that was my experience with the CCTV, and it was really quite unfortunate, and it was not a very yeah. So these two things, like the WhatsApp issue and the CCTV issue, really affected me, and it was quite a big downside for me in terms of being at this particular center. So yes, that is my review of my stay here at the Lili Retreat Confinement Centre and my experience overall of being in confinement. I'm really excited and looking forward to be reunited with my family, and we're going to celebrate today by having dinner together. They're on their way right now. It's about 5:46. They should be here by 6. So we're really excited to just be reunited. So that's all for me. I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you found it helpful. And here's to our next adventure, really. Cheers!